snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So today I'm going to be doing a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is The Eyre Affair, which is book number 1 in the Thursday Next series by Fforde. This series I've had on my shelves for ages, and I have been intending to pick it up for absolutely ages. It was part of my May TBR, so I am really happy that I have finished it, and I'm just going to tell you guys what I thought of it. So, I ended up rating this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars because although I really enjoyed the idea of it and the premise and the whole idea of the world and the characters was so interesting and so intriguing, for me it was a little bit disappointing just because I hadn't read the actual work that it was referencing a lot of its stuff from, and that is obviously Jane Eyre, hence the title. Maybe I should have noticed that and read that before reading this, but I'm not a classics kind of person. I really don't like them very much, and I haven't really found a sort of genre in classics that really fits my taste. So far I have not read Jane Eyre or anything like that. But I still really enjoyed this book. I definitely felt like I would have got a lot more enjoyment out of it had I read that. So if you have read Jane Eyre and you really enjoyed it, I would say definitely pick this up because it's 100% worth the read anyway. And if you have read it, then it's probably even better. But for me, someone who had not read the classic work that it referenced a lot of its material from, I still enjoyed it, and I still would recommend this series if you don't mind sort of not knowing everything, because it does unravel in front of your eyes and you do see what is going on, but obviously it's kind of spoilers for the actual story of Jane Eyre as well, so I doubt I will ever read Jane Eyre, and if I do it'll be a long time in the future I expect, so for me it wasn't a problem kind of being spoiled slightly. However, let's go on to the actual story plot and stuff like that. So this story is set in 1985 in an alternative world, and it's set in London. So this world is not too dissimilar to ours, but it definitely has big differences. And there are things that are a lot cooler and there are things that are a lot worse and not very good. Everything in this world revolves around literacy and all sorts of literary books and writings and authors and journalists, and just everything in the literary world is kind of referenced in this. And the world kind of revolves around fiction and non-fiction and original manuscripts, and there's museums that you can go to where you can see original manuscripts sort of on display, and there's all sorts of really wacky and fun ideas involving like literacy and reading. So obviously it's a book about books, always a good thing. And then there's also organisations which are dedicated to certain causes in the literary world. The Baconists, who are convinced that Bacon was the one who actually wrote the William Shakespeare plays and that Shakespeare is an imposter, and they go around kind of like Jehovah's Witnesses and they try and convince you to come to their cause and get you on their side. And it's a really funny play on that, which I really liked. And there are also kind of these CIA-esque operatives who work for Spec Ops. Spec Ops are essentially kind of like a police force, a kind of very secret police force. They deal with all sorts of different things, and there are all sorts of different sections that Spec Ops is divided into, and one of those being the Litratech section, which is what our main character Thursday Next actually works for. So she is a fairly average kind of litratech. She's got a bit of a reputation for being involved in some big cases, but she's nothing really high up or anything like that. And basically her job is to deal with all sorts of different situations that arrive in the literary world, such as characters coming to life, characters coming out of books, people falling into books, original manuscripts being stolen, anything and everything that can happen that is considered a crime in this new parallel world. Another section of the Spec Ops is the Chrono Guard. Thursday's father is actually from the Chrono Guard and he can travel in time, so that's pretty cool, and that's a definite plus in my opinion to the story. It was a very kind of sci-fi feel, but it was really interesting, and they can manipulate other events in history, and it's just a really interesting idea, really fun premise. So the story focuses largely on Miss Thursday Next, and she is a very, very witty young woman. She has a very solid way of doing things, and she's very kind of floating along. She doesn't really know what she wants in life, but she is a very witty and sarcastic and just funny character. But her life is a little bit up in the air. She's not really friends with her mum. Her dad is in the Chrono Guard, so she never sees him because he's always travelling through time. She doesn't have a steady partner or anything like that, so she's kind of a bit of a lone wolf, and she's just very witty but very sad kind of underneath, and I thought that that was a really interesting quality for her to have, and it definitely made me feel a bit more believability from her, which was a good thing. She has a decent reputation within the Literatex, and she is a good operative until something happens and a big bust goes kind of astray and everything starts to go a little bit haywire, and she becomes involved in it, and some people don't believe her, other people think she's gone a bit crazy, so this big event that happens kind of causes her to take a new route in her life, and she goes a new direction. She goes back home and she joins a different force down there. So that's where the story really kind of kicks off into, oh dear, we need to solve this problem mode. So I really have to say that the elements of the characters coming to life and falling out of their story and falling into other stories, I thought that was an absolutely wonderful idea, and I think Jasper Fforde should be highly praised for this idea and bringing it to life in a very kind of believable way. Even though we know it's a magical book and it's all fantasy and fiction, it is a really fun idea, and we would love to go and play in that world. I would love to go and play in that world, because it just sounds like it's so cool. And there are risks, of course. You could perhaps fall into a story and get trapped there, which would be terrible. So it is a risky business, but it is also a really cool idea, and for us readers sitting at home reading it on our own, it's a very, very cool idea, and it's just the sort of thing you would love to imagine doing. One of the elements that was in this book, it's quite near to the end but it's not really a spoiler, is that there is a big focus on grammar and the way that apostrophes and question marks and hyphens and everything are used, and how when they're incorrectly used it can kind of cause mayhem. And it's kind of a pun on that, and it's a really funny way of doing things, and basically the writing on the page just goes a bit haywire, and you're kind of chuckling as you read it, which is always a good thing. I would definitely say that that was a really witty thing to include. I would say that Thursday is a character who does take a little bit of getting used to. She can be a little bit standoffish, and she can be a little bit silly or a little bit irritating at times, but once you get past that, she is actually a very, very good character, and she has good intentions, and she is working towards the goal that we want to have at the end of the book. So she is a good character, but it did take me a while to kind of really get on her side and back her the whole way through. I feel like this book is probably a lot more setting up the world than it is really telling a story, because although there is a storyline, it really doesn't pick up until the last quarter of the book, and the first 3 quarters are really just setting up the world, telling you all of these really cool things that are going on and how the world is and what is kind of expected of Literatex and the Spec Ops and all that sort of stuff. So it was really good, but I definitely feel like there is a lot more that could have been done and hopefully is going to be done in the next few books. Also, I would like to mention that in my opinion this is not really a YA book. I would say that this is kind of between YA and adult, because it does have some really, really technical terms, and it does have some terminology that does reference the classics that it's talking about. So it isn't a low grade read at all. It's definitely something you've got to have intelligence to read, and you've got to be prepared that at passages, you know, although it is really funny and comical, it is also written in very good English, and it's very proper and prim, which I liked. So I would say that if anyone is thinking it's a kid's book or a young YA book, it's probably not. But that doesn't mean that if you think you can read it, then go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to. So I really, really want to know what you guys think of this, if any of you have read it, because I'm really interested to know what other people thought. Is this kind of a setting up book for the rest of the series? Definitely tell me if you have read it. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear all of your opinions about this book and this series and Jasper Fforde in general. I love his Shades of Grey book. I did prefer that one to this. But I will be carrying on with this series sometime in the future, and I am excited to. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon in my next video. Bye!